Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. And today I'm gonna talk about property management. So if anybody know me, they know that I have a couple of like different um, kind of like income stream. I have a W-2 job. I have an investment properties. I have a business with a couple of people. And today I'm gonna show one other income that I do, which is property management. And the reason for that is because I've been managing property for a while, and it's been pretty successful in my term at least. And that triggers me to be able to start doing property management for other people as well. So the first thing that I want anybody like a landlord or an investor to know, it's like kind of like the general term of the property management here in Southern California. So what I did is I went over to Google Gemini and I put in this little phrase right here. What is the typical terms for a property management company around Orange County, California? That's because I live in Orange County, California, and most of my friends are here. So that's what I'm trying to do. So the result is in Orange County, property management term typically balance a percentage-based monthly fee with several event-based charges like finding a new tenant or renewing a new lease. Because Orange County has some of the highest rent in the country, even a small percentage can be significant. Here's a breakdown of the standard term and fees encountered in the market, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the typical terms and compare it to what we do here in KT Wealth Builders. We manage property too, and I'll let you know why we're all well, in my view is we're better, right? So the first thing that you need to know is that when you find looking for a property management company, the what is it called again? The interest of the landlord and the property manager need to be aligned, because if they're not aligned, then there's gonna be trouble. Uh, Here it is. Let me go through the list and I'll let you know what I mean. So the core management fee. So there's one that most companies charge a monthly fee or a flat fee. So for single family, it's home is 8 to 9, 10% monthly rent in the is standard, right? And then if you go to multifamily, it's a apartment. You can go from 4% to 7%, depending on the number of units, right? So here we just do a flat 7%. So for KT Wealth Builder, if we manage your property, we'll take 10%. I mean 7% flat. If no, doesn't matter if it's a single family or it's an apartment. And I'll tell you why. I mean the 7% sound like it's a bit more expensive for apartment building here, but we believe that what we provide is superior to other property management company or a typical management company. And then of course you have the option of doing a flat fee option too. Some firm charge 150 to 300 per month per unit. So because we're doing a 7% and flat 7% fee, it sometimes come out to be less than this amount. Anyway, so the second thing that you need to look for is a leasing and placement fee. This is a one-time fee charged when the manager find and move in a new tenant. It covers marketing, showing, and intensive tenant screening. Now, here's the thing that we're different from other company. We do not charge any placement fee or leasing fee. So if it's a standard range is 50% to 100% of 1 month rent, we don't have that. So if your tenant move out and we need to look for a new tenant, it is our duty as a property management company to look for that new tenant. The only fee that you have to pay is around $200, and the reason for that is we might have to hire somebody to do like if it's not around Orange County, might have to hire somebody to show your property and take photos of your property. So it's only like a flat $200 fee to do the photos, and then we're doing the listing on the MLS and on Zillow and everywhere else for free, like included. So there's no charge for that. And then if it's too far away and we need somebody help to do the showing, then the 200 fee is included in there. The reason for that is because like I have property in Barstow or San Bernardino, and it's like an hour or 2 hour drive from where I live. So when I need to show those property, I don't go there. I hire somebody there to do the showing, and then at the end of the once the lease is signed, and the deposit and the first month rent is collected, then I pay that person $200. So that fee is for placement of a new tenant. So for other property management company out there, they typically charge you 50 to 100% for the 1 month rent. Now the reason that we don't charge for that is because if we do, then our best interest and the best interest of the landlord is not the same. Because the thing is, like, if we have this kind of fee, then we aren't motivated to keep a tenant renewing a lease. So if a tenant have issue, and and we get 50 to 100% of the rent for the new tenant, then there's no incentive for us to try to keep that tenant, or try to keep that tenant happy, so that they can renew it, and then there's no gap in the rent. For a landlord like myself, that's one of the biggest costs is the turnover. So if a tenant, every year at the end of the lease, they move out, and then somebody else has to move in, it costs a lot of money. It costs at least half month, 2 weeks to a month to find a new tenant. So because we want to align our interests with the landlord, we don't charge that. So if the landlord doesn't collect any money from that unit for that month, we should be also, right? So that's why that's the placement and the leasing fee. We only charge $200, and that is to cover the photos, the listing on the MLS, the showing, and even like all the document signed, lease, and everything too, right? And then what's included like here, like I said, professional photo listing, we only charge a 200 flat fee for that. And most of the charge is going toward paying somebody to open the door for the tenant to see it. Because if you have like 10 showing and you keep on like showing one at a time, it's gonna be too much time consuming. So that's why I usually hire somebody to do that. And what you need to look out for is some discount firm offer low monthly rate but charge a full month rent for every new lease. This is what I'm talking about right here. So they can charge you low rate, but they don't have an incentive to renew somebody, because they know that they can get like 50 or 100% of the first month rent for any new tenant. Then the interest and your interest aren't the same. I mean, if you follow my channel, you notice that the last property that we purchased is a 14 unit, and when escrow closed, 8 out of 14 units are vacant. And that's the reason why the property management company, like, if they don't, if they pay don't tie into the revenue that the landlord receive every month, then they don't have an incentive to fill it up to the max, like giving maximize the income for the landlord. So this is how uh, we are able to align our interests with the landlord. Okay, and the third one is the common secondary fee. Again, agreement often includes smaller charges that can add up. Ensure these are clearly defined in your contract. So here, lease renewal, we don't charge anything if you need a renewal. But then the thing is, usually like after a year lease, it's gonna automatically roll into a month to month. But if the landlord want us to re-sign a lease, then we can go ahead and do that. But what happened is when the lease is re-signed, then it's locked the rate of the property with the rate on the lease, so that you can't increase the rental rate if as you please. So the thing is, like, that's the reason why I'm doing it month to month, because after a year, uh, if they stay there and they're a good tenant, for me there's no reason to to force them to stay there for another year if they have some kind of emergency. And of course, it's not like the priority for us to sign a new lease every year for every tenant, because what if we want to raise up the rent like in the middle of the year, like, then we can't, because we have to wait until the lease ends. So that's why we don't renew lease unless the landlord requests us to do so, but there's no charge for that. So this, if you're a landlord and you want to look for a company that manage your property, you have to look for, watch out for the secondary fee, right? And then annual inspection fee, we don't, the other company might charge that, we don't do that. The reason is because all throughout the time that the tenant lived there, any issue that they have, we respond to it as quickly as possible. Like I said, that tie into keeping the tenant happy so that they stay longer and you don't have a lot of turnover. So this is something that we don't do because if we manage like 100 units, we have to do it 100 unit a year. It's gonna cost the landlord a lot. So that's why we don't do that unless they request it to for us to do it. And then maintenance markup, 10%. We don't mark up on maintenance, period. So whatever the repair cost is, it's gonna be paid. The materials paid, and then the labor is paid. So what I have right now is kind of like let's take our property in Barstow for example. Like if the repair, if the material is like $200, and then the time that the person, my handyman up there spent on it is $10, 10 hours. Then I'm paying them $20 an hour, so that's 200 for the material and then another 200 for labor, and that's charged directly to the landlord, not to us. So we don't mark it up. So anything that's like cost more than like 500 or so, then we're probably gonna have to reach out to the landlord and let them know what we're gonna do, and then get an approval from them. But the landlord can pay the the maintenance or the maintenance worker or whoever's doing the job directly, and we can provide contact for that. So we don't mark up any maintenance charge at all, right? And then set up an onboarding, a one-time fee of $200 to $500 to start the account and integrate the property into their software. Now the thing is, like, we don't charge this. We don't charge like a setup or an onboarding fee at all. Another thing that we do want to do is, because we're using a software called Turbo Tenant, and in that software we can set up the property account and then link it to the landlord bank account, so that if the tenant pay through that, then we can see that the tenant paid the landlord, and the money go directly to the landlord bank account. We can also set it up where the tenant pay the landlord directly via Zelle or Venmo. But the thing is, because they pay the landlord directly, we won't have visibility for that. So we need the landlord help to let us know that they get paid or not for that month. So for example, let's say it's the third of the month and the tenant sell the money to the landlord for their property, but because they sell it directly, it won't go through term or tenant, and we won't see that. So the system's still gonna keep on sending them like reminders for late fee, for the late rent, right? The rent is due and it's late, and it's the landlord responsibility to let us know, oh, they received the full rent, or they received whatever rent, or they received like half a rent, and we need to charge a late fee for that. Now that is something that the landlord will have to help us with, because like I said, we want to be transparent. So that's why we don't want to collect the money and then pay back the landlord. We want the money to go directly into the landlord bank account, and because of that, we can't see the bank account obviously. So that if the money go directly from the tenant to the landlord, then the landlord have to let us know, right? That's something that um, we can set it up. Or it's if the tenant pay through the system Turbo Tenant, via set up their bank account and do an ACH. There's no charge for them. They go through Turbo Tenant. Turbo Tenant pay the landlord directly to their bank account, and we can see it in the system that the tenant already paid. If we can set that up, then that's the best. But if not, then the tenant can pay the landlord directly, right? And then there's a couple of typical contract clause to watch for. Termination. So ideally, it's a 30-day notice without a heavy exit fee. So we can terminate our term at 30-day notice. As soon as the landlord as soon as the landlord lets us know, right? So, but the thing is, like, typically we want to lock in the year contract, because the reason for that is like we don't want a landlord to come to us and, oh, here I have like 10 property that's vacant. Can you help me find somebody to live in there? And then we go and we did all our work, and let's say 2 months later we're done with all the we just set up 10 people, and by that time we get no income from that 10, because the landlord doesn't have any rental income for that. And then after 2 months or 3 months, they cancel on us. So we want to do a year term at least for the first year, and then after that 30-day notice, right? So that's for us. I don't know about the other company, but that's for us. right? And then maintenance limit, like again, like a threshold, like around typically like 500. If it's more than that, we get approval from the landlord before we send out somebody. Right? We reach out to the vendor to repair it. And eviction protection, some mostly firm offer eviction guarantee where they cover costs of up to 1,000 if a tenant they place need to be removed. We don't have that, but what we do is we will help the landlord throughout the whole eviction process. We don't charge anything for that, but again, the pay, the fee for the for the lawyers and stuff like that, it have to come out from the landlord if there's an eviction. But we do like a very thorough screening process. We do like background check, criminal records, collection collection history. So we are very like very what's that word called? We are very sorry, the word just completely gone. We're very confident that the people that we've placed into the property are good tenants, right? And then another reserve fund, like again, because we don't keep the money from the landlord at all. We don't keep anything from the landlord because the money go directly to the landlord bank account. So we don't set up an account to keep a reserve fund. So the payment that I have to pay to the main guy come directly from the landlord, and the payment from the tenant go directly to the landlord. So it's going to the bank account of the landlord, right? So anyway, if you have any question regarding property management, you can reach out to me, and I'll be able to go through the term and all the questions that you may have for property management. Again, we only have what we have is set like a flat 7% fee for managing your property, and there's no setup cost. There's nothing like that. And the reason for that is we wanted to align our interest with the landlord. So as long as the landlord you know receive the revenue, that's when we get our money. If the landlord doesn't receive their money, we don't get the money. There's no reason for us to charge a a, a, a placement leasing and placement fee from a property because like I said, this is a loophole that if some property management company, if bad enough, they can take advantage of this loophole and just like not renewing the tenant every year and just try to kick them out so that they can get the 50 or 100% of the first month rent, right? And that's every single time that happen, like it's gonna cost the landlord a lot of money. So we want the landlord to be happy by aligning our interests with the landlord interests. Anyway, I am a realtor in Orange County. I do help people buy, sell, or rent property. So if you have any question regarding buy, sell, or rent, please let me know. My number is 714-679-3690. That's 714-679-3690. Thank you so much and see you next time.